Welcome to our depth dive into the world of novel writing. We'll be checking out Jenna Moreci's Shut Up and Write the Book. It's full of advice for writers on everything from that initial story idea, like that spark, all the way to getting that book published. And even though we'll be focusing on writing a novel, I think a lot of the concepts and tips that we'll be talking about today can be applied to other forms of creative writing too.
Absolutely. Moreci lays out a roadmap for the whole writing process, really. And she doesn't shy away from the challenges, which I appreciate. But she also offers encouragement and practical advice for every single step of the way.
Okay, so let's jump into it. One of the first hurdles that Moreci tackles is finding that initial spark, right? That story idea that sets everything in motion. And her advice is a little bit unconventional. She says, and I quote, "Think shit up." Basically, she encourages silencing that inner critic and just letting the ideas flow.
Wow.
No matter how outlandish they might seem. Have you ever had an idea that you immediately just dismissed as too weird or too ambitious?
I think we all have. But Moreci urges you to reconsider those ideas. She emphasizes that we tend to be much more creative than we give ourselves credit for. You know, we're constantly making decisions and choices in our daily lives. And those are all mini acts of creation. So that same creative energy, it can be channeled into generating story ideas.
It's about giving yourself permission to brainstorm without those boundaries. I love that. But okay, let's say you have a notebook full of ideas, right? How do you choose which one to actually pursue? Well, Moreci's advice here is to write what you want to read. It's about tapping into your passion, the burning desire for a story that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah, that enthusiasm is key. It makes the whole writing process much more enjoyable. And it's likely to resonate with readers too. Think about it. What kind of story are you dying to read? But you can't seem to find it anywhere. That might just be the seed of your next masterpiece.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. So it's really write the book that you want to read. But Moreci also reminds us to be savvy about the market. So it's not about chasing trends just for the sake of it. But if your awesome idea happens to align with, with what readers are already hungry for, well, hey, that's a bonus.
Right. It's finding that sweet spot where your passion and the marketability, they intersect.
Yeah. That's the dream, right? Okay, so you have a story idea that makes your heart sing. It's time to think about structure, even for those who identify as pantsers, which is a term that Moreci uses for writers who prefer to, just fly by the seat of their pants and discover the story as they go.
Yeah.
So pantsers are those who love to dive right in without a lot of planning. I can definitely relate to that sometimes. But Moreci emphasizes that even pantsers can benefit from some level of outlining, right? At least to ensure a cohesive narrative. She compares a story's structure to a pyramid.
You have the beginning, or the inciting incident at the base. Then the rising action that leads up to the climax, the peak, and then the falling action and resolution. And there are a bunch of different frameworks out there, like the three-act structure, the hero's journey, even Moreci's own model that she kind of tailored to adventure and love stories.
And Moreci actually breaks down her own unique structure into 11 key points. And they're each designed to propel the story forward and keep readers engaged, for example. Instead of just throwing the reader right into the action, she suggests starting with, and I quote, "a look at normal life," which helps establish the protagonists, their world and the routine before things get turned upside down.
Yeah, that grounding in the normal makes the disruption, the inciting incident, that much more impactful. And then there's establishing the protagonist's desire early on, which adds another layer of intrigue. We understand what they want, what they're striving for. And that sets the stage for all the challenges and conflicts that they'll face in the story.
So it's fascinating to see how these structural elements all work together to create that compelling narrative arc. Now, Moreci also offers a really cool method for outlining using note cards. So each note card represents a plot point, and they're color-coded based on the content.
Oh, yeah. Red for violence, pink for romance, and so on. And this visual approach can be really helpful, to see the big picture, spot potential issues, and ensure that the story flows smoothly from one point to the next. So what outlining technique do you currently use? Or is there one that you're intrigued to try?
Oh, I'm a big fan of mind maps, but I might have to give Moreci's note card method a shot.
All right, so you have your framework in place. It's time to bring your characters to life. And Moreci is all about creating realistic, well-rounded characters. She believes the characters should have both positive and negative traits, which makes them feel more authentic and relatable. Right, imagine a character who is kind, but they steal from the farmer's market. To feed their family, it's unexpected, it adds complexity, and it makes us as readers kind of question our assumptions about them.
Right, and it's those little quirks and nuances that make characters truly memorable. memorable.
Right.
So instead of just saying a character has, brown hair and blue eyes, you might mention that they speak multiple languages, or have a scar from a childhood accident, or use slang that's specific to their age group or region. So what small details do you like to incorporate to make your characters feel more real?
That's a good question. I think for me, I find myself thinking about their mannerisms a lot. Like, how do they hold themselves? Do they fidget? Do they make eye contact? Those little things can reveal so much about their personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are excellent points. And those details kind of naturally lead us into Moreci's thoughts on world building. Now, it's so easy to get caught up in creating these intricate worlds, but she cautions against what she calls world builder's disease. Wait, hold on. World builder's disease? What is that?
So world builder's disease is when writers spend years crafting these elaborate worlds with, detailed histories and languages and cultures, but without a story to actually, inhabit them. The world building becomes an end in itself, rather than serving the narrative.
Ah, okay. So it's like those meticulously crafted movie sets, right? That are visually stunning, but they lack a compelling story to bring them to life.
Exactly. Moreci emphasizes that world building should always serve the story. Like, readers only need the details that are relevant to the plot and the characters' experiences.
Right. So it's about creating a world that feels authentic and lived in, but without overwhelming the reader with unnecessary information. I love how Moreci reminds us that, and I quote, "People are not a monolith." So even in a fantasy world, right, individuals will have different opinions and beliefs and ways of life. What world building detail have you created that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, let me think. I once spent weeks developing a unique language for a fantasy race, complete with its own grammar and syntax. It was a labor of love, but I only ended up using a few words in the actual story.
That's amazing. Okay, so we have our idea, our structure, our characters, and our world. Are we finally ready to write that first draft?
Yes, Moreci says, jump right in.
Yeah.
And accept the suckage of that first draft.
She's all about embracing those messy beginnings, those imperfect first attempts. It's so liberating to hear that.
It really is. And she has some great tips for making the drafting process less daunting. First, set goals, both long-term quarterly goals and short-term daily or weekly goals. This helps to break down the task into more manageable chunks.
Yeah. I find that incredibly helpful. It's like training for a marathon, right? You don't just run 26 miles on the first day. You gradually work your way up to it.
Exactly. And Moreci emphasizes that consistency is key, building those writing habits, rather than waiting for motivation to strike.
So can we edit as we write? I always feel like I'm constantly tweaking things.
Moreci actually advises against editing while writing the first draft. Like, she says to focus on getting the words down first. Without getting bogged down in self-editing, the goal is to keep that momentum going and finish the draft.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But what about all those little mistakes and bad writing habits? Do we just ignore them for now?
So Moreci says to just take note of them as you go. If you notice a recurring problem like overuse of adverbs or awkward dialogue tags, just jot it down. And by the time you finish that first draft, you'll have a handy list of things to focus on during the editing phase.
Oh, that's a great strategy. It's identifying those weak spots so you can target them later. What's your biggest writing challenge during the first draft stage?
I think for me, it's definitely getting those first few sentences down. Once I have that initial momentum, I'm good to go.
Oh, yeah. I can relate to that. That initial inertia is definitely the hardest to overcome.
Definitely. But Moreci reminds us that the first draft is just the beginning. It's meant to be messy and imperfect. You'll have plenty of time to polish it up later.
Whew, that is reassuring to hear. It takes some of the pressure off that first draft, knowing that it's okay for it to be messy.
Totally.
Okay, so we've powered through that first draft. What's next on Moreci's writing journey?
It's time to dive into that all-important first chapter. And Moreci, she believes that it should start with a bang.
Ooh, I love a good opening scene. One that hooks me from the first page. How does Moreci suggest accomplishing that?
Well, she emphasizes that the opening scene should be like a microcosm of the overall tone and genre of the story, So if it's a fast-paced thriller, you want to start with a high-stakes action scene.
Yeah.
And if it's a lighthearted romance, maybe incorporate some humor right away.
Yeah. It's like giving readers a taste of what's to come and setting the stage for the adventure that awaits them. What else should we keep in mind for that crucial first chapter?
Well, Moreci stresses the importance of introducing your main character and their problem early on. Don't linger in the normal world for too long. Readers want to see the conflict, the challenges, the stakes. And she also also cautions against info dumping.
Ah, yes, the dreaded info dump. It's so tempting to cram in all that backstory and world building, but it can really bog down the reader, especially at the beginning.
Exactly. Moreci's advice is to build the world gradually, weaving in those details as the story unfolds. It's more organic, and it keeps readers engaged. And
Oh, yeah.
she also reminds us that as writers, we're constantly evolving. So, like the writer you are at the end of that first draft will be stronger and more skilled than the one who started it.
Oh, that's encouraging to hear. It means we don't have to get hung up on making that first chapter absolutely perfect right away. We can always go back and revise it later with fresh eyes and a deeper understanding of our story.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving beyond that first chapter, we often encounter the dreaded sagging middle syndrome, that point where the story loses momentum and it feels a bit, I think we've all experienced that feeling of hitting a wall in the middle of a story. What exactly causes this sagging middle syndrome, and how can we avoid it?
Well, Moreci describes it as that feeling when the middle of the novel, it lacks depth and it fails to move the story forward, like it's running out of steam. And one of the biggest culprits is a lack of conflict.
Oh, so we need to make things harder for our protagonist. That seems a little counterintuitive, but I can see how it would create tension and keep those readers engaged.
Exactly. Moreci suggests introducing complications, crises, setback, things that raise the stakes and keep readers on the edge of their seats. She reminds us that stories thrive on conflict and overcoming obstacles.
Right. So it's not about like coddling our characters. It's about pushing them to their limits and seeing what they're made of. But how do we do that without like veering off track or getting lost in subplots?
Yeah, Moreci's actually a big fan of subplots, but she cautions against letting them dominate the middle of the novel. She emphasizes that subplots should complement the main story, like add layers of interest, reveal more about the characters, but never overshadowing the main plot.
Okay. It's like those side quests in a video game, right? They're fun and they can enhance your understanding of the world, but you don't want to get so distracted by them that you forget about like the main mission.
Exactly. Another key to avoiding a saggy middle is to make sure that every chapter serves a purpose.
Yeah.
And moves the story forward, even if it's just a tiny bit.
Moreci talks about setting goals for each chapter, right? It's as if each chapter should have its own like mini mission for the protagonist to accomplish.
I like to think of it as checkpoints in a race. Each chapter should move the protagonist closer to that finish line, that ultimate climax of the story.
Ooh, I like that. That's a great way to look at it. Okay, so speaking of climaxes, Moreci dives into the concept of a breaking point. So what is that exactly, and why is it important?
So the breaking point is that moment of utter despair for your protagonist, which usually comes right before the climax. It's a point where everything seems lost.
Yeah.
And they're tempted to give up.
Oh, it's that classic fall before you fly moment. It creates that emotional roller coaster for the reader. So why does Moreci believe this breaking point is so crucial?
Well, it makes the protagonist's eventual triumph feel earned.
Yeah.
We need to see them struggle, suffer, almost give up before they can rise to the occasion. Moreci suggests stripping away their hope, making them face their deepest fears, leaving them feeling utterly defeated.
Okay, so don't hold back on the drama. It's about pushing them to their absolute limit, emotionally, A&D, physically, but it can't be all like doom and gloom, right? There has to be that glimmer of hope, or a reason for them to keep fighting.
Right. The breaking point can't last forever. You got to give your protagonist a reason to rally.
Yeah.
To get back in the game and fight for what they want. Maybe they're inspired by a friend, or they tap into some hidden reserve of strength, or maybe they just refuse to let the antagonist win. It's about showing their resilience, that inner strength that allows them to overcome those setbacks and ultimately achieve their goal.
And wouldn't that be the perfect moment for a plot twist?
Moreci loves plot twists, but she emphasizes that they should be both surprising and inevitable. They should shock the reader, but also make sense in hindsight.
So how do we achieve that delicate balance of surprise and inevitability?
So Moreci suggests using foreshadowing. She calls it leaving breadcrumbs. It's about planting subtle clues along the way that readers might not pick up on until the twist is revealed.
It's like setting up a puzzle for the reader to solve. You're giving them all the pieces, but it's up to them to put them together.
Exactly. And Moreci encourages writers to be subtle with those breadcrumbs, dropping them into scenes where the reader's attention is focused elsewhere. That way, when the twist is revealed, it has maximum impact.
Okay, so it's about playing with the reader's expectations and keeping them guessing. What are some specific examples of these plot twists?
Well, Moreci talks about red herring, which are designed to mislead the reader. And then there are bait and switches, where you set up an expected outcome.
Yeah.
And then you deliver something completely different.
I can see how those would keep readers on their toes. Are there certain points in a story where Where plot twists are most effective.
Well, Moreci suggests placing a plot twist right before the climax. Almost like the ultimate breaking point.
Ooh.
It's where everything comes to a head, the breaking point, the plot twist, that rising tension, all leading to that explosive confrontation.
Okay, let's talk about writing a climax, one that truly delivers. What are some of Moreci's top tips for crafting a climax that's both exciting and satisfying?
Well, first, she advises to give your protagonist a disadvantage. You want the reader to question whether they'll actually succeed, to create that sense of nail-biting tension.
So we need to stack the odds against them, make it seem almost impossible for them to achieve their goal. How do we do that effectively?
Moreci says it could be anything, really, from physical limitation to emotional turmoil to facing an opponent who's stronger or more cunning. It's about putting them in a situation where failure seems imminent. And this is also a prime spot for a well-placed plot twist, which adds another layer of surprise and intensity to the confrontation.
Yeah, it's like that one last thing moment that throws everything into chaos. But even with all that drama, the climax shouldn't feel rushed, right?
Right. Moreci's a big believer in pacing. She stresses giving those pivotal moments space and attention. Like, don't rush through the action or the emotions. Allow the tension to build. Let the reader savor those confrontations and make those key moments truly memorable.
So it's about creating a climax that's both exhilarating and emotionally resonant. But once that explosive climax is over, it's time to bring the story to a satisfying conclusion.
Exactly. Moreci emphasizes that the resolution shouldn't feel rushed or abrupt. Just because the main conflict is resolved doesn't mean the story is over. Yeah.
Okay, so what should we keep in mind when crafting that resolution?
Well, Moreci says that the resolution should tie up those loose ends, answer any lingering questions, provide a sense of closure. And she reminds us that it's also a great opportunity to highlight the protagonist's character arc, and show how they've changed over the course of the story.
It's like that final exhale after holding your breath for the entire story, releasing all that tension and seeing the world through new eyes.
I love that image. Moreci also suggests revisiting settings or situations from the beginning of the story, but with a new perspective or outcome that reflects the protagonist's transformation. It's a subtle but powerful way to reinforce their character arc and create a sense of thematic resonance.
I can see how that would create a satisfying sense of closure for the reader. But before we start celebrating, there's that often dreaded task of self-editing.
Ugh, yes, the self-editing can feel daunting. But Moreci breaks it down into manageable steps, which makes the process a lot less overwhelming.
Okay, tell me everything. What are her top tips for a successful self-edit?
Well, first, she recommends reading through the entire manuscript without making any changes. Just get a feel for the flow of the story. Make note of any major issues that jump out at you.
So it's about taking that initial assessment, seeing the big picture, before getting bogged down in the details.
Exactly. She even suggests highlighting or marking those major issues so you can easily find them later. It's like creating a roadmap for your self-editing journey.
Yeah, I like that visual. Okay, so what comes after that initial read-through?
Next, she suggests tackling inconsistencies. This could include character names, settings, timelines, even the spelling of made-up words. And then it's time to make a list of your most common writing mistakes, those recurring errors that you tend to make, and categorize those mistakes into developmental issues, prose problems, and grammar errors. This will help you prioritize. And focus on the areas that need the most attention.
Okay, so it's a targeted approach to editing, rather than just randomly going through and hoping for the best. What else?
Moreci suggests sectioning your self-edit. Like, don't try to tackle the entire manuscript at once. Break it down into chapters or smaller chunks to make the process feel less overwhelming.
That makes so much sense. It's those bite-sized tasks that make a daunting project feel manageable. Now, doesn't she also recommend reading the story out loud?
Yes. She believes it's a fantastic way to catch errors that you might not notice when you're reading silently. You can read it aloud yourself or use a text-to-speech program.
Yeah, I find that hearing the words spoken aloud can reveal clunky phrasing or awkward dialogue that I didn't catch when I was just reading in my head.
Exactly. It's a whole new perspective on your writing. And if you encounter like a tricky editing dilemma, Moreci suggests saving it for later. Like, don't get hung up on a single sentence or paragraph.
Okay. It's about picking your battles
and
keeping that momentum going. Speaking of different approaches, Moreci talks about underwriters and overwriters. What's the difference, and how can we identify like which camp we fall into?
So Moreci describes underwriters as those who tend to write simply and directly, but their work can lack depth or detail. Like the first drafts might feel like bare bones, needing more fleshing out.
So it's like they're holding back, not fully committing to the scene
Yeah.
or the emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Moreci encourages underwriters to focus on adding those sensory details, exploring their characters' inner lives, and bringing those scenes to life. Overwriters, on the other hand, they tend to write too much. They might ramble, repeat themselves, or get bogged down in unnecessary details.
So it's like they're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, but it ends up feeling cluttered and unfocused. How can they rein it in?
Moreci advises overwriters to tighten their prose, eliminate filler words and phrases, and hone in on the essential elements of their story. It's about finding the right balance, knowing when to elaborate and when to hold back.
So I know this is a huge topic, but can you give us like a few examples of common writing quirks that we should look out for during the self-editing process?
Oh, yeah. Moreci dedicates a whole chapter to this. One common culprit is the dreaded filter word.
Yeah.
These are words that distance the reader from the action, like saw, heard, felt, or thought.
Oh, yeah. I've heard those called telling words as opposed to showing words.
Yes. Moreci encourages us to cut those filter words whenever possible and let the actions and emotions speak for themselves. It creates a more immediate and immersive experience for the reader.
Yeah. It's like the difference between watching a movie and reading a play. You want to feel like you're right there in the scene with the characters, experiencing everything firsthand.
Exactly. Another common pitfall is overuse of adverbs.
Oh, I know those get a bad rap. What's the problem with adverbs?
Well, Moreci explains that they can often be replaced with stronger verbs or more descriptive language. Like, for example, instead of saying he walked quickly, you could say he strode or he hurried. It's about making those verbs work harder.
Right. So it's about choosing words that are more evocative and precise.
Exactly. And she also highlights those sneaky crutch words that we all tend to overuse, like just really you started. They might seem harmless on their own, but when used repeatedly, they can really weaken your writing.
Yeah, it's like those the spices, right, that can enhance a dish when used sparingly, but overpower the flavors if you use too much.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And of course, she addresses those ever tricky commas.
Oh, commas. I feel like those are every writer's nemesis.
I know, right? But Moreci encourages writers to learn the rules of comma usage and watch out for common errors. She also stresses the importance of avoiding.
Ugh, yes, those can be so sneaky. I'm constantly having to like double check myself.
Me too. But Moreci reminds us that those little errors can really distract readers.
Okay, moving on to dialogue. I've heard the advice that said is dead. Is that true?
You know, Moreci actually disagrees. She says that said is perfectly acceptable as a dialogue tag.
Yeah.
Because it's unobtrusive and it doesn't draw attention to itself. It's like that invisible stagehand who keeps the dialogue flowing smoothly.
So we don't need to get fancy with our dialogue tags.
Moreci encourages writers to avoid overly descriptive tags like exclaimed, whispered, or muttered. They can be distracting.
Right. It's about letting the dialogue itself convey the emotions and the tone.
Exactly. And finally, Moreci emphasizes the importance of consistency in both tense and point of view.
Yeah.
You know, tense shifts can be really jarring for readers, making it difficult to follow the story.
Yeah. I'm especially prone to tense shifts. It's something I really have to watch out for during the self-editing process.
We all have our weaknesses, but Moreci offers lots of helpful tips for identifying and correcting those inconsistencies.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel armed with a whole arsenal of self-editing knowledge now. Okay, so once we've polished our manuscript to the best of our ability, how do we determine where our book fits into the literary landscape?
That's where genre and category come into play.
Yeah.
And Moreci offers a systematic approach to figuring that out first. She suggests brainstorming a list of all the possible genres your book might fall into.
Okay, so no judgment at this stage. Just let those ideas flow freely.
Exactly. Then, once you have your list, she suggests narrowing it down by analyzing your story's plot, characters, setting, and the conventions of the genres you're considering.
Right. It's about finding that sweet spot between your creative vision and the expectations of readers in that genre.
Exactly. Moreci stresses the importance of understanding those genre conventions. Like, for example, if you're writing a romance, readers will expect a happy ending. And it's perfectly acceptable for your book to fall into multiple genres, like a romantic suspense or a historical fantasy.
It's about embracing those hybrid genres.
Right.
And finding the combination. That best reflects your story. Now, once you've nailed down your genre, how do you figure out the category?
So category is all about the target audience. And Moreci acknowledges that the lines can be blurred, but She provides a clear breakdown of adult fiction, middle grade, young adult, and new adult.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed that the lines between YA and new adult can be particularly fuzzy.
Right. But she offers some helpful tips for deciding which category your book belongs in, such as considering the age of your protagonist, the themes of your story, and the maturity level of your writing.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your story resonates with the right readers. Now, once you've got your genre and category figured out, what about that all-important title? How do we come up with a title that captures the essence of our story and grabs readers' attention?
Well, Moreci believes that titles can really make or break a book. And she offers a bunch of helpful strategies for finding that perfect title. Like she suggests considering genre conventions, keywords, the essence of the book, imagery or settings, and even like quotations from the text.
Oh, okay. So when she mentions genre conventions, does that mean like using certain words or phrases that are commonly associated with specific genres?
Exactly. Like if it's a fantasy novel, you might consider titles that use words like magic or dragon or kingdom. And if you're writing a thriller, you might include words like dark, secret, or revenge. These subtle cues, they signal to readers what to expect.
Right. It makes sense. It's like setting the stage for the reader's experience before they even open the book.
Right. And she also suggests thinking about keywords, like terms that readers might search for online. To find books like yours. It's about making sure your book is discoverable.
Yeah. Discoverability is so important these days.
Definitely. And Moreci also encourages writers to think about the core themes of their book. Like, what is the one-sentence summary that encapsulates the heart of the story, you know?
Yeah.
Could that be woven into the title?
It's about capturing the essence of the story in just a few words. So what else should we keep in mind when brainstorming titles?
Well, she suggests looking to your story's imagery and settings. Like maybe there's a particular place or object or symbol that plays a significant role. Something you could weave into the title. And she also recommends thinking about quotations from the text itself, you know. Maybe there's a memorable line of dialogue or a phrase that perfectly captures the essence of the story.
Oh, I love that idea. It's like giving readers a little sneak peek into the voice and tone of the book. But of course, we want to avoid titles that are too similar to other books or too generic.
Yeah, Moreci cautions against that. She emphasizes finding that sweet spot. A title that's memorable and easy to understand. But also unique. And she recommends getting feedback on your ideas from other writers, beta readers, or even like friends and family.
It's so valuable to get that outside perspective and see what resonates with other people. It's about finding that title that makes people say, I have to read this.
Totally.
Okay, so you have that killer title. Now it's time to seek feedback from other readers. Moreci believes that feedback is essential for polishing that manuscript. Now, I imagine this can be a little scary for some writers.
It definitely can be, but it can also be incredibly valuable. And Moreci, she breaks down the roles of critique partners, beta readers, and sensitivity readers. And she also offers tips for finding and working with these readers effectively.
Okay, let's start with critique partners. Who are they and what role do they play in the writing process?
So critique partners are fellow writers who can provide feedback on your work. From a craft perspective. Moreci suggests finding writers who are at a similar skill level, who enjoy the genre you're writing in, and who you feel comfortable sharing your work with.
Right. It's like finding your writing tribe, those people who understand the ups and downs
of the creative process. And she also emphasizes the importance of both giving and receiving critiques effectively.
Yes. She suggests being specific in your feedback, focusing on both strengths and weaknesses, and being respectful in your comments. You know, it's about creating a safe space for growth and improvement.
Okay, so what about beta readers? How do they differ from critique partners? So beta readers are more like those ideal readers we're hoping to reach with our book. They're not necessarily writers themselves. They're simply avid readers who provide feedback from a reader's perspective. Moreci suggests seeking beta readers who represent your target audience. Like if you're writing young adult fantasy, find beta readers in that age range who enjoy that genre.
So it's about getting that authentic feedback from the readers you're hoping to connect with. How do we ensure that we're getting useful feedback from beta readers?
Well, Moreci recommends giving them specific questions to consider, like what they enjoyed most about the story, what parts confused them, and how connected they felt to the characters. It provides structure for their feedback and ensures that you're getting the insights that you need.
Okay, so on to sensitivity readers. I know this is a newer role in the publishing world.
Yeah,
I think it's essential.
I agree. It's all about ensuring that our stories are inclusive and respectful, especially when writing about characters or topics outside of our own lived experience.
Exactly. It's about doing that due diligence and making sure that our stories aren't perpetuating harmful stereotypes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she also stresses the importance of approaching sensitivity readers with an open mind.
Yeah.
And being willing to learn to make changes.
Yeah.
Based on their feedback. It's about embracing that opportunity for growth and creating stories that are both entertaining and responsible.
Okay, so we've gotten feedback from these from these various readers. It's time to take that next big step, the professional edit. So what are Moreci's top tips for finding the right editor and making the most of the editing process?
First, Moreci explains the different types of professional editing. There's developmental editing, line editing, copy editing, and proofreading.
Okay, let's break those down. What does each type of editing entail?
So developmental editing focuses on the big picture, the structure, plot, characterization, pacing, and themes of your story. Line editing is more focused on the sentence level. It's about clarity, flow, word choice, and voice. Copy editing focuses on the finer details like grammar, punctuation, spelling, consistency, and fact-checking. And proofreading is that final check for any remaining errors before your book goes out into the world.
It sounds like each type of editing plays a crucial role in polishing that manuscript and ensuring that it's the best it can be. But there are so many editors out there. How do we find the right one for our book?
Well, Moreci suggests asking for recommendations from other writers, checking out editor directories, and researching potential editors' websites, testimonials, and samples of their work. She also recommends requesting a sample edit.
Yeah.
To get a feel for their style. Make sure they're a good match for your writing.
Yeah, it's like test driving a car before you buy it. You want to make sure it's the right fit.
Exactly. And she also stresses the importance of having an open conversation with potential editors before hiring them.
Yeah.
You know, talk about expectations, budget, and the timeline for the project.
Yeah. It's all about setting those clear expectations and making sure that you're on the same page. But once you've gone through all the stages of editing, how do you know when your book is truly done?
That's the big question, isn't it? Moreci suggests asking yourself a few key questions, like have you completed all the necessary steps? Have you received positive feedback from editors, beta readers, and ARC readers? Do you feel a sense of completion and readiness to share your story with the world?
Right. It's about trusting your gut and knowing that you've done everything you can to make your book the best it can be.
Exactly. And she reminds us that it's normal to feel nervous when releasing your hike into the world. It's a big step. But she encourages writers to trust in themselves and their stories.
It's about embracing that vulnerability and taking that leap of faith. This has been such an incredible journey, exploring the process of crafting a novel from idea to publication. What was the most impactful piece of advice for you?
I think for me, I was really struck by Moreci's emphasis on structure and the importance of a clear plan for your story, even for pantsers. Like her guidance has given me a renewed sense of confidence about my own writing.
Yeah. I was particularly inspired by Moreci's advice to embrace the messiness of that first draft and remember that we're constantly evolving as writers.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure diving into this book with you. And we encourage all you deep divers out there to check out Jenna Moreci's Shut Up and Write the Book. It's full of wisdom and inspiration.
Now, one final thought for you to ponder. If Moreci's book title were advice for you, what would your Shut Up and project be? What story are you burning to tell? Go forth and create.
Until next time, happy writing.